Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be continuing our read through of this book, History as It Happened, a Map by Map Guide. And I've got my paintbrush here to brush all of the maps for you tonight. We're going to be talking about Europe tonight. And there's a lot of maps to get through, so we're just going to dive right in. I'm going to do all the maps up until the Age of Discovery, right? When Europeans started sailing west into the Americas. I feel like that's a good halfway, right? All right, here we are in Europe. Let me make sure this is straight. Also, if you're new to this series, I have not read any of these maps and facts ahead of time. So this is all very off the cuff. It's going to be very informal, maybe a little silly. I'll be just saying the things that come to mind as I read, and I'll probably make mistakes here and there, just because I haven't read everything in advance. But let's get started. It looks like we're starting with Athens versus Sparta. Yeah, we're hopping right in here, making sure that this is in frame. I guess it's as good as it's going to be. Okay, Athens versus Sparta. From 492 BCE, the Greek city Athens led an alliance of city-states that ended the Persian Empire's attempts to invade Greece. Athens emerged from the conflict as a major power and began to create its own empire. This worried some of the Athens' neighbors, especially Sparta, the great military city-state. The Peloponnesian War flared up between the two in 431 BCE, named after the Peloponnese Peninsula of southern Greece, home to Sparta. It says major loss. This 19th century engraving shows the defeat of the Athenian navy at the Battle of Syracuse in 413 BCE. This was a turning point in the war. Athens did not just lose most of its ships in this engagement. It lost much of its power and prestige and never fully recovered from this humiliating attack. You know, Athens was known for their sea power, especially against the Persians, so yeah, it's pretty bad when they lose a naval battle, especially to the Spartans, who are more like hand-to-hand combat fighters. So let's start off here at number 1, rival powers. Set up in 478 BCE to protect Greece from Persia, the Delian League is a union of states dominated by Athens. As Athens' power grows within Greece, clashes with the Spartan-controlled Peloponnesian League erupt from the 460s BCE. Both sides agree a truce in 445 BCE. When Athens breaks it in 431 BCE, the war begins. Let's see what we've got here. We've got all the Persians over here, but they're actually not really that involved at the time. Is all of this Persian too? Is that what that means? Is there a hidden key somewhere? Yes. Okay, the Delian League is this peach color. So all along the coast here, all the islands here, this is the Delian League. And Sparta and its allies are purple. So all of this area here, they've got, it says Delphoi. There's Sparta right here. It says Sparta is a highly militarized state ruled by kings, the polar opposite of democratic Athens. See Athens right here. This Athens controls the Delian League, and after the Persians are driven back, uses it to launch its imperial ambitions. Let's see what happens next. The Spartan advance. In 430 BCE, just a year into the war, and with victory looking likely, Athens is struck down with a deadly plague that kills up to 1/3 of the city's 300,000 inhabitants, including the influential war leader Pericles. This hands the advantage to Sparta. After struggling to gain ground in the west, Sparta has more success inland, taking the strategically important city of Plataea, close to Athens, in 427 BCE. So it says down here, the Athenians are the red arrows, moving up this way. There's a battle there, and moving down this way. And over here, toward what's today Turkey, it says the Athenians head east and north to attack Sparta's allies. And the Spartans are purple, so they're going up, up, up. Oh, I must skip this. It says the Athenian forces advance into the Spartan heartland of the Peloponnese, but the Spartans are going up this way. These islands here, part of the Delian League. Spartan attacks on Athenian supporting states in western Greece are mostly unsuccessful. There's a big bow. That's Plataea right there. All right, Athenian revival. Still paranoid that you can't see everything. You can see everything. I'm just checking. Athenian revival. Victories in 425 BCE, such as at Pylos, mean Athens regains the upper hand and makes territorial gains. Defeat for Sparta seems certain, but victory at the Battle of Mantinea in 418 BCE revives its fortunes. After this loss, instead of trying to grow its empire on the mainland, Athens turns its attention to Sicily. All right, so the Spartans are heading up this way, to this battle up here. And it says after losing the Battle of Amphipolis in 422 BCE, Athens signs the Peace of Nicaeus with Sparta. It only briefly stops the fighting because there's the Athenians going this way up to the battle here. They're getting this island here. And look at all these battles here. My goodness. They're moving up, up, up to fight the Spartans here. It says after victory at Pylos in 425 BCE, Athenian forces advance north and score a number of victories. And this battle here says up to 10,000 men on each side square off at Mantinea, the largest land battle in the whole of the war. But now we're at the end of the war. Believing that one way to beat Sparta is to defeat its allies, in 415 BCE, Athens sends a huge fleet to attack Sicily. This results in a crushing Athenian defeat there 2 years later. In 412 BCE, Persia allies with Sparta, and Persian military support in 405 BCE helps the general Lysander to destroy the fleet defending Athens. The war ends the following year with Athens' surrender. What is happening here? It's pointing way up here, I guess, to this battle here. It says Sparta's victory at Agospotami in 405 BCE is the last major naval battle of the war. You can see the Spartans heading up here. There's a battle there, heading up there, and heading up to where Istanbul is today by the looks of it. And the Athenians are heading over here, fighting battles. And it says Athens and Sparta trade wins and losses in modern-day Turkey. Here at Athens, it says Sparta occupies Athens after the war. It ends democracy in the city, and 30 tyrants are put in charge. And then they're off to Sicily. It says in the Sicilian expedition of 415 to 413 BCE, Athens attempts to take the island, but is badly defeated. This picture's up here. It says the Athenian statesman Pericles encouraged the growth of his city-states empire. There's Pericles there, with the temples of Athena up there. There's a little moth in here, or something. What is that? Is that a little beetle? There's a little bug in here. Hopefully it doesn't fly onto my book and startle me. The Spartan general Lysander oversaw the final defeat of Athens in the war. Lysander. What's next? Alexander's next. Moving on to Alexander the Great. Alexander III of Macedonia, known as the Great, is one of the most celebrated ancient rulers. In just over a decade, he turned a series of impressive victories into an empire of 2 million square miles, which is 5.2 million square kilometers, that stretched from his native lands in ancient Macedonia and ancient Greece to Egypt and India. There he is here. There's a quote here saying, "We shall fight for Greece and our heart will be in it." Famous Alexander. This mosaic of Alexander riding into the Battle of Issus was found in a palace in Pompeii, Italy, nearly 400 years after Alexander's death, proof that his fame had traveled far and lived long in the memory. Here's Bucephalus, his very beloved horse. Starting here, number 1, early days. Alexander's born in Pella, Macedonia, in 356 BCE, the son of King Philip II. At 18, he gets his first taste of battle by leading a victorious cavalry charge. Alexander becomes king at the age of 20 when his father is assassinated at his daughter's wedding. And there's a sculpture of him here. Pointing here, it says Philip II had transformed his army into an effective fighting machine. Number 2 is about Persia. Alexander's heading off, it says here. Let's read this first. Alexander's army is the largest force ever to leave Greece. It includes 43,000 troops and 5,500 cavalry. Off they go. Now we can read about Persia. Alexander attempts to realize his father's dream of conquering the Persian Empire. His armies sweep through Persian cities from 334 BCE, with many surrendering. He defeats the Persian leader Darius III at Issus in 333 BCE and completes the victory by beating him again 2 years later and adding Persia to his realm. There's Persia. So he's galloping off. He heads down here. That's Issus there. He heads through Tyre and he decides to hop into Egypt for a little bit. Let's see what he does in Egypt. Persian-controlled Egypt greets Alexander as a liberator in 332 BCE. He visits a famous oracle who proclaims him the legitimate pharaoh. Alexander begins claiming he is the son of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, and founds the first of many cities in his name, Alexandria. Here it says Alexander gives instructions to the Greek architect Dinocrates on the building of Alexandria, which is right here. It's still there today. I did a whole video on Alexandria. You should check it out. It looks like he went over to Amman and back over to Memphis, which I believe was the capital at the time. And he's heading back up this way. This is Alexander defeats Darius III a second time at Gaugamela in 331 BCE. Darius is killed by his own troops. We're going to skip this one. This is a spoiler because we're not quite there yet. We're going over here to Susa and Pasargadae and Ecbatana and heading this way, take a little detour there at the Caspian and heading around here to, what is that? Artaquana? Okay, to there. And around. It says after Darius falls, Alexander spends 3 years conquering Persia's northeastern provinces from 330 BCE. He's going all over the place here. Heading down over here it says army revolt. After reaching northwest India in 326 BCE, Alexander is eager to push eastward. His army, however, weary after 8 years of fighting, wanted to return home. They eventually win the argument. They all turn back. Here it says Bucephalus. Alexander's horse dies in 326 BCE. Alexander founds a city in his memory. We're heading down here. Yeah, the campaigns in India kind of like spooked his army. They're like, we're kind of done. These people have like big old elephants and stuff. Like there's something else. There's something that we don't want to deal with. So they start heading home. Some of them go by boat, but Alexander goes by land. It says in 325 BCE, many troops die of intense heat and thirst in the Macron and Gedrosian deserts. And then we're heading back over. He returns to Babylon, and he doesn't make it out. In 323 BCE, at the age of just 32, Alexander dies in Babylon, probably from malaria. The empire that he dedicated his life to falls apart soon after his death, with his generals scrambling among each other for power. There's debates about what he died from. It could have been a number of things. It doesn't matter. He died. That's what's important, but nobody knows quite for sure what really happened. He was ill with something or other. Now it's time to talk about Rome, the rise of Rome. Over the course of more than 1,000 years, Rome grew from a city-based republic to an empire that spanned 3 continents. Rome's powerful army allowed it to dominate the lands and people of the Mediterranean and Western Europe. After it grew too large to rule effectively, the empire split into western and eastern sections from the 4th century CE. The western half fell into decline, but the eastern half survived as the Byzantine Empire. Let's read through the numbers and then we'll look. It looks like El Gem's up here and Caesar's down there. Let's just read the numbers first this time. It says Italy conquered. The Roman Republic controls much of the area around Rome by 300 BCE and offers citizenship to the inhabitants of towns and cities throughout Italy if they become Roman allies. By 270 BCE, Rome's influence extends over the entire Italian peninsula. So the Roman Republic is purple, just kind of centered mostly around Rome by the looks of it. It says the city of Rome expels its rulers and becomes a self-governing republic in 509 BCE. See, on 300 it's just this. In 270 it's the entire peninsula, the whole boot there. Rome victorious. After a series of wars, first with Carthage and then Greek kingdoms to the east, Roman territory expands into North Africa and the eastern Mediterranean. By the death of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE, the Roman Republic controls most of the land around the Mediterranean and much of Western Europe. Right, so the Roman Republic in 146 BCE is purple. So we have all of Italy here. They've got Sicily. They've got a bunch of islands here. They've got Greece, like pretty much all of Greece today, including Macedonia there. And they've got Hispania. They've got southern Gaul and a lot of Hispania. It says here Hispania is slowly absorbed into the Roman Empire over 2 centuries. Yeah, a lot of this belonged to Carthage. They've got Carthage by this point. Gaul is conquered by Julius Caesar between 58 and 50 BCE. So yeah, the Roman Republic in 44 BCE has this chunk of Hispania. Looks like everything but the north coast there. They've got Gaul, which is pretty much today France and a bit of the Low Countries. They've got more of the coast here. They've got little bits above the Black Sea. They've got a lot of Anatolia here. They've got the Levant. They've got Cyprus. And they've got lots of the North African coast along here. Then we move on to Imperial Rome. In the power struggles that follow the death of Julius Caesar, his heir Augustus takes full control, becoming the first Roman emperor. By the time of his death in 14 CE, a period of stability known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, has begun. Over the next century, the Roman Empire reaches its greatest extent, spreading its influence from Britain to the Persian Gulf. So the Roman Empire in 14 CE is now purple. So we've got all this area here. They've got all of Hispania, right? All of Western Europe over here. Like we said, pretty much all of Italy and all these islands and all these islands. All this area here. They've got more of the Black Sea coast. Looks like they got a little bit more of Anatolia here. More of the Levant, a little bit. More of the Nile area here, and more along the coast of North Africa. And then in 117 CE, they've got some of Great Britain up here. You can see Hadrian's Wall. This stone wall is built from 122 CE during the rule of Emperor Hadrian to defend the empire's northernmost border. They got this chunk here. They've got all of this area of Eastern Europe here. They've got way more into Asia and Mesopotamia here. It says Emperor Trajan expands the empire to the east, bringing Mesopotamia briefly under Roman control in 113 CE, all the way to the Persian Gulf there, and way more down here. And then they've got the rest of the North African coast. Looks like I skipped something in Carthage. It says after Rome sacks Carthage in 146 BCE, the city becomes an important outpost in the empire in North Africa. Then we have the fall of the West. The size of the Roman Empire makes it difficult to rule. In 286 CE, the empire split, with separate emperors in the east and west. Later rulers unite the two halves, but after 395 CE, a single emperor never rules the whole empire again. Invasions reduced the territory of the Western Roman Empire, and its last emperor is deposed in 476 CE. So the Eastern Roman Empire in 395 CE is gold. So we've got the Balkans here, we've got all of these islands. There's Byzantium. It says Constantinople, formerly Byzantium, becomes the capital of the Byzantine Empire. And then all of the Levant and this bit of what's today Egypt and Libya here in Africa. And then the Western Roman Empire in 395 CE is light green. So it's pretty much like everything else that we looked at before, islands here and such. North African coast, but by 476 CE, it's just the dark green. So it's just this area here in Gaul. They still have Italy and Sicily and along the Adriatic coast here. But that's about it. Everything else has been lost due to invading, like, Germanic peoples and other, I want to say, like, what? Not the Anglo-Saxons at that point. Anyway. All the invading peoples who already lived here were like, nah, get out. The last emperor of Rome was overthrown in 476 CE. There's Rome. Alright, here's El Jem up here. If you've never seen the amphitheater of El Jem, it is in Tunisia and it's absolutely stunning. It says, this 3rd century arena in Tunisia, North Africa, is a great example of how the Romans spread their architecture and culture throughout the empire. Though it was far from Rome, a crowd of 35,000 spectators could engage in the Roman pastime of watching gladiators fight wild beasts or even each other. El Jem is the largest surviving Roman amphitheater besides, of course, the Colosseum. El Jem's number 2. Down here is Caesar. It says a popular general and politician, Julius Caesar was made dictator of Rome in 49 BCE after his successful conquest of Gaul. Just a few years later, he was assassinated by a group of Roman senators who were fearful of his growing power. I came, I saw, I conquered, veni, vidi, vici. Yeah, it's a misconception that Julius Caesar was the first emperor of Rome. He was not. It was his nephew Augustus was the first emperor. Caesar was dictator. Coins of the Roman Empire often featured portraits of the imperial family, such as Julia Domna, wife of Emperor Septimius Severus. That was a good little page about Rome. Oh, we've got a little bit more here about the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Terror descended on the people of Pompeii when Mount Vesuvius began to belch out toxic gases, lava, and flames, followed by a hail of large stones and ash. Vesuvius, a giant volcano, had threatened to erupt for years, but its deathly fury held back until the morning of August 24th, 79 CE. The eruption completely buried the city, along with thousands of its citizens, for centuries. The pyroclastic flow from Vesuvius was as hot as 750 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 400 degrees Celsius, and moved at speeds close to 435 miles per hour, which is 700 kilometers per hour. There's a great painting here of what it must have been like in those last hours, death from above. People in Pompeii and the other towns and cities around Mount Vesuvius didn't have long to react before death began to rain down on them from above. As an ominous, toxic cloud of stones and ash spreads, a pyroclastic flow containing lava, ash, and stone pours from the volcano. The twin attack buries cities and towns, trapping terrified people trying to survive. It must have been nightmarish, I can't imagine. But let's see what happens here. There's Vesuvius. This looks like the yes, this pyroclastic flow, the key's up here. The pyroclastic flow spread all this way. That's so wild. So there's Herculaneum. It says the town of Herculaneum is buried under 65 feet of ash and rock. That's 20 meters. Then we've got Atlantis and, of course, Pompeii, the famous one. Towns and cities in the fast-moving pyroclastic flow zone are destroyed and mostly buried. Looks like Neapolis probably just escaped the flow. But all this gray here is smoke, ash, and toxic gas cloud. Oh yeah, the destroyed towns are red dots, so this town survived. But these towns did not. It looks like Stabiae also didn't make it. But here's how far this cloud went across the Bay of Naples. The eruption sends a column of smoke, ash, and toxic gas about 20 miles or 32 kilometers into the air, which winds soon spread across the Bay of Naples. Oh, I see. The winds spread it across the Bay of Naples. I see. What a terrifying event. A new Roman Empire. Carved out of the Roman Empire, which had become too large to rule, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, outlived the Western Empire. It became a great civilization in its own right, upholding many Roman traditions and developing its own, all the while fighting for survival on many different fronts. Look at this super cool medieval artwork. Goodness, it's so busy. It's almost Boschian, right? Look at all the boats too, ships out there. The end of Rome. Oh, this is the this is the invasion of Constantinople. These are the Turks out here, I think. The Ottomans. The Byzantine Empire ended on, well, then let's save this for last then. Let's start at the beginning. This is the end of it. Reconquest. By the mid-500s, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I retakes territory lost by the fall of the Western Roman Empire. He strengthens his empire's control of the eastern borders. The Byzantine Empire reaches its greatest extent under his rule. Let's see. The Western Roman Empire at this point is just Italy, islands here, a little coast, and right here, and a little bit over here. But the Byzantine Empire, oh, looks like a little bit right there too, is all throughout here, all throughout, and then they reconquer this Roman area here. So let's see what these say. Byzantium takes southern Spain from the Visigoths in the 550s. In 533 to 530, to 553, I think that's what it says. Justinian defeats the Vandals and Ostrogoths, two of the Germanic peoples who ended the Western Roman Empire, in battles in North Africa and Italy. There it looks like Cherson, the Black Sea port of Cherson is an important trade and military outpost. And Byzantium's eastern side borders the powerful Sassanid Empire, another relic of Alexander the Great's empire getting broken up among his generals, created the Sassanid Empire. And there's Constantinople right here. Losing land. Look at this big map. The growth of the Bulgarian Empire in the Balkans, raids by nomadic peoples from Eastern Europe, and Muslim armies pushing from the south and across North Africa eat away at Byzantine territory. My goodness, this is busy. Where do we even start with this? Holy moly, look at all these arrows. Okay, let's start here. Byzantine land lost is pink. So they've lost this coast on Spain. They've lost Ceuta. They've lost Carthage, they lost Tripoli, Alexandria, and down the Nile along the Red Sea here. Jerusalem, Damascus, Antioch. They lost this little bit here too. And then look at all this area of Italy that they lost, and all the islands too. The Bulgarian Empire is this purpley outline here. Conquering. It says the Bulgarian Empire is founded in 681. It takes over parts of Bulgaria today, Romania, the Balkans, and Greece at the expense of Byzantium. Major battles are shown by little swords, but I think that's down here. All right, Muslim invasion. We're already at Muslims invade. I guess 6. Yeah. Okay. They're coming up from here. They're hitting up Damascus, Jerusalem, Alexandria. It says Muslim forces take Egypt, Palestine, and Syria from Byzantium in the early 600s. They hop up here too. And they're going by sea, heading over to Nicaea, heading up into Greece here, and then very famously across North Africa here. By 700, the Muslim conquest of North Africa has ended Byzantine power there. They get to Carthage, Syracuse here. They've got the Balearic Islands. They head over to Ceuta and up, and very famously up into Spain there. Right, nomadic tribes are green arrows. These tribes are heading into Rome. It says nomadic raids weaken the Byzantine Empire. Because, yeah, look at all of these. Look at all these invasions. That's quite a lot. My goodness. Persians are purple. So the Persians are hitting up Antioch, Damascus, Jerusalem, Alexandria, and Constantinople. And the Byzantines are red, so they're heading over here. Heading to Ctesiphon. In 627, Byzantine Emperor Heraclius stops Sassanid attacks by launching a counterattack against the Sassanid capital, Ctesiphon. And the Seljuks are down here. They're not quite at the Seljuks yet at this point. They don't quite exist yet. Let's talk about them. End of the empire. After centuries of conflict with... Oh, wait. The Fourth Crusade. That's here. Okay, not here yet. After centuries of conflict with rival empires, an attack by Christian crusaders in 1204, and a civil war, Byzantium shrinks dramatically. In 1361, the city of Adrianople falls to the Ottoman Empire, who make it their capital until they capture Constantinople a century later, ending the Byzantine Empire. So Byzantine land lost. It looks like all of this here, all of these islands, and I'm guessing up here too is part of it. There's battles here. It says Crusaders wrecked the city of Zara in 1202 before sacking Constantinople in 1204. Yeah, here's the Fourth Crusade. I read a whole history magazine article about it. It was a whole deal. But yeah, the Crusaders sacked Constantinople. Also, Normans controlled southern Italy by the late 11th century. A civil war from 1321 to 1328 weakens the empire as rival regimes base themselves in Adrianople and Constantinople. And there's Manzikert. The Muslim Seljuk Empire invades Byzantium and takes the Byzantine emperor prisoner at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. You can see them heading up, down, and all around Nicaea. There's a little map over here. It says by the 1360s, the Byzantine Empire is little more than the area immediately around Constantinople, which the Ottomans would conquer in 1453 and rename Istanbul in 1930. The Byzantine Empire is just here. And they've got a little bit down there on the Peloponnese, looks like. All right, now we can read about the fall of Constantinople. The Byzantine Empire ended on May 29th, 1453, when its capital city, Constantinople, was taken by Turkish Ottoman armies after a 53-day siege. The Ottomans relied on superior tactics and weaponry, including huge cannons, to take the city. Many argue that this event marks the end of the Roman Empire after almost 1,500 years. I would agree. That is the ending point of the Roman Empire. The voyages of the Vikings. From the 8th century, Viking warriors began raiding across Europe, carried in longships that sailed out from modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. But the Vikings were not just violent raiders. They were explorers, settlers, and traders too, and the first Europeans to set foot in the Americas. All right, let's start down here. Still paranoid that you guys can't see, but you can. Setting sail. A growing population and a shortage of land forces many farmers and fishermen in Scandinavia to sail overseas for food, goods, and economic opportunities, usually in summer when the seas are calmer. They are happy to trade, but when the chance arises, also take by force the things they want from their more vulnerable neighbors. Let's see, where's the key for this? Over here. All right. Swedish Vikings are pink, Norwegians are orange, Danish are green. You can see Norway, Sweden, Denmark, color-coded here. So here go the Norwegians, heading out to the Faroe Islands and the Shetland Islands, hitting up Lindisfarne here. It says, in 793, Vikings raid the rich and undefended monastery of Lindisfarne on England's northeast coast. For many, this marks the beginning of the Viking era. They attack Dublin here as well. It says Viking raiders arrive in what will become Dublin in 841. They stay for the winter and establish a settlement there. And then they head down to, looks like Noirmoutier. But so do the Danes. They hop over to Britain too, but they're sailing here through the English Channel. Over here. Looks like battling as they go. Danes, like other Vikings, rarely sail far from the coastline on their early voyages. By 843, they have set up a base camp on the island of Noirmoutier at the mouth of the Loire River. And the Swedes are just sticking over here. They're heading up Staraya Ladoga here by Lake Ladoga. Staraya Ladoga in modern-day Russia is founded by Viking traders in 753 to buy and sell furs, timber, honey, and enslaved people. All right, expanding horizons. Norwegian Vikings started to voyage farther afield. They began exploring the Atlantic Ocean and making raids around southern Europe to the Mediterranean. Danish Vikings, meanwhile, put down permanent roots in Britain. What's the gold mean? Settlements. Okay. So yeah, settling here in Scotland. And then here in England, there at York, it says in 866, York becomes the capital of Danish Viking-held lands in England and remained so until 954. All right, looks like they're heading up to Iceland now. From the 870s, Iceland is settled. The Vikings make it a republic rather than a kingdom. The parliament they set up, called the Althing, is the world's oldest. All right, we're also going down here. There's some settlements here along the coast of southern Ireland here. Head into France and Spain and Portugal. Here at Lisbon, it says, after raiding Lisbon and Seville in 844, Vikings reached the Mediterranean Sea in the later 850s. There's Seville there. And they're sailing up here and attacking as they go. According to one story, Viking raiders attacked the port of Luni in northwest Italy in 860, believing it to be Rome. Silly Vikings. All right, the Swedes are really establishing themselves up here. It says Swedish Vikings captured territory in Eastern Europe. Here they become known as Varangians. Then settling down. In time, the pagan Vikings become Christianized and intermarry and are absorbed into the cultures they once raided or traded with. Their attacks happen less frequently, and Viking voyages become more focused on exploration and adventure. By the time the Viking descended Normans conquer England in 1066, the age of the Vikings is at an end. Where to start? I guess we'll start with the Norwegians again. Iceland's now one big settlement, and so is the coast here along Greenland. In the early 980s, Viking outlaw Eric the Red, fleeing justice at home, he unalived 2 people, arrives in Greenland. By circa 1000, Vikings have reached what they call Vinland, an area thought to be the northeastern coast of modern-day Canada. They sail up here, realize there's probably nothing up there but polar bears and seals, and then sail down here. Meanwhile, an Anglo-Saxon victory over the Vikings at the Battle of Edington in 878 results in the 2 sides agreeing to split the land into areas of control. The Viking area is known as the Danelaw. Meanwhile, look how much they've expanded. Look at the Swedes. They're going absolutely nuts over here. Look how far they're traveling. Look at that. They're going all over the place. And look, they're stretching all the way down to the Black Sea. Varangians capture Kiev in modern-day Ukraine in 882. This leads to the formation of Kievan Rus, part of which will later become Russia. Then here at Constantinople says the Varangians sign a trade treaty with the Byzantine Empire in 907. Some Varangians become the personal bodyguards of Byzantine emperors known as the Varangian Guard. Alright, my cat has been crying at the door for a while now. I'm gonna go let him in. Alright. Jet's in here. He might be making noise. I don't think he actually wants to be in here. He just wants my attention, so he's probably gonna cause trouble. So there'll probably be another cut in 5 minutes of me letting him back out. Okay, where were we? We were reading this map here. And it says here in 911, Vikings established a kingdom in northern France called Normandy, the land of the Northmen. The Vikings living here are called Normans. You can see right there. I think that's it for that map. Over here is Leif Erikson, I think. Is that who that is? Born in Greenland in around the 970s, the son of outlaw Eric the Red, Viking explorer Leif Erikson is believed to have been one of the Vikings who were the first to reach the Americas 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Up here it says sturdy ships. Viking longships, or drakkar, were narrow with a shallow bottom or draft. They were up to 25 feet or 23 meters long and could sail in even the stormiest seas. For extra fearsomeness, carved dragon or snake heads often decorated their prows. Down here it says, this pendant of a woman is typical of Viking silver jewelry, with simple details impressed into the surface. See, what did I tell you? He's got his toy and now he's playing with it. Okay, that's happening. Let's see what happens next in Europe. It's the father of Europe. No European ruler was as influential as Charles I, King of the Franks. Over the 46 years of his reign, his many victories on the battlefield united large parts of Western Europe. He became the defender of Christianity, and he even attracted scholars and teachers to his court, which led to the flourishing of the arts. Though he was known as Charles or Karl during his life, he is better known to us as Charlemagne, meaning Charles the Great. And the most famous and greatest of men, says Einhard, Charles's biographer, which we just did a whole History Magazine article last week about Einhard and his biography of Charlemagne. Good timing. All right. I don't know where he went, but I can hear him. Okay, that's happening. King of the Franks. After Charles's father, King Pepin, dies in 768, Charles and his brother Carloman become co-rulers. Carloman dies suddenly 3 years later, mysteriously, leaving the way free for Charles to rule Frankish lands, made up of most of modern-day France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, with parts of Germany alone. No Carloman. Charles launches attacks on the Kingdom of Lombardy in modern-day Italy and defends the Pope from his enemies. Let's see what we've got here. Territory is all red. This is all of his territory here. The blue arrows are major campaigns. So says right here, Charles leads his troops into Muslim Spain in 778, but is defeated and turns back. Here into Lombardy, to Bavaria. Charles begins the first of a long series of attacks at the pagan Saxons, looking to convert them to Christianity. And what else? Loud cars there. What are all these? Oh, conquests is here, so Lombardy. And then this chunk of Italy here. And marches are over here. It says buffer areas between Christian and non-Christian territories are called marches. Charles uses them to protect his core territories. Here it says the Pope, the spiritual leader of Christians in Western Europe, lives in Rome. I'm stuck to the page there. Number 2, Holy Roman Emperor. Charles conquers Bavaria in 788. As his power grows, the Pope gradually relies on Charles to protect him and his lands, leading to a close alliance. Pope Leo III crowns Charles as the Holy Roman Emperor in 800, linking the ancient Roman Empire to Charles's lands and rule. So now this is all of their land here. So conquests, like I said, they've got Bavaria and this bit of Italy here. It says, after becoming Holy Roman Emperor, the Pope's lands, known as the Papal States, come under Charles's protection. Here in Bavaria, it says, after Bavaria is conquered, their march moves farther into Eastern Europe. So their marches are here in Brittany. All of Brittany becomes a march in 799. Down here along the Pyrenees in Spain, Egypt. Despite losing in Spain, Charles manages to set up the Spanish March buffer zone in 795. There he goes. And then way over here, it says Charles defeats the pagan Avars in Pannonia, which is modern-day Hungary, in 796. And over here, it says Charles builds the magnificent palace at Aachen in modern-day Germany and makes the city his capital. But that's it. Okay, number 3, Charles the Great. In 804, the wars for Saxony, begun in 772, finally come to a close. Saxony is added to what is now called the Carolingian Empire after Charles. He dies in Aachen in 814, by which time he's better known as Charles the Great, or his French equivalent, Charlemagne. So now he has all of this area here, huge kingdom. He conquers up here, and the marches are still right here, down here in Brittany, and up here it says Charles's forces push into pagan territory to help secure the borders of his realm. Then Europe is divided. Charles became known as the Father of Europe in his own time because he had united much of the western part of the continent. When divisions between his grandsons Lothar, Louis, and Charles caused his empire to be split in 843, it is the first step toward the modern European states of France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy. So the kingdom of Charles the Bald is all of this here. It says Charles the Bald's kingdom covers most of modern-day France. Then here's the kingdom of Lothar. Well, here, Lothar receives a long strip of land from parts of modern-day Belgium to northern Italy. And the kingdom of Louis the German is all this here, and it says Louis the German takes the land east of the Rhine River. Coronation. Pope Leo III crowns Charles in Rome on Christmas Day 800. In return for Charles's protection, the Pope gives Charles the backing of both the Church and also the memory of ancient Rome. Charles becomes seen as the defender of Christianity in Western Europe. Down here it says cultural ruler. I always have to check and make sure you can see. Charles became an influential model of kingship for later European rulers, not just because of his success on the battlefield. He also made the reform of education a priority and attracted scholars to his court to improve learning. The result was a cultural golden age, often called the Carolingian Renaissance. One of the highlights of this was a biography of Charles written by a member of his court, which is how we know so much about him. There he is looking kind of dour. Moving on to the Crusades. The Crusades are a series of military campaigns launched from Europe that were ordered by the Christian Church. From 1095 until 1291, Christian warriors fought to reclaim Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control. Though there were at least 8 major crusades, the first 4 are the most historically significant. So here's the First Crusade. The First Crusade is called by Pope Urban II. Though its aims are not clear at the start, it gradually becomes focused on regaining the Holy Land, the places the Crusaders associated with Jesus Christ's life, especially Jerusalem, from Muslim rulers. The crusade, Urban argues, is God's will, and anyone who dies on it will surely get to heaven. The main crusading armies set off within months. Once there, they face unprepared and divided Muslim rulers who are unable to stop them. The First Crusade ends with the capture of Jerusalem in 1099, an unexpected success for the Crusaders. Where's our key? Down here. All right, Western Christian territory is orange, so all of this up here is all Christian territory. It says some Crusaders massacred Jewish people in Europe on the journey. Well, that was unnecessary. Most of the Crusaders came from France, Germany, and Italy. Then the Orthodox Christian territory is green. So all this here, it says Orthodox Christians are allies of the Crusaders. We got this area here and right here. Then the Armenian territories right here. It says Armenian Christians are allies of the Crusaders. And then the Muslim territories all purple. All of this over here. All of this over here. There's so much to paint. All of this here and down here. They've got the Balearic Islands too, by the looks of it. So now they're heading down this way. Heading toward Constantinople, looks like. Heading over to the Armenians, probably to rally for help. Then heading down to Jerusalem, and some sail this way. It says Jerusalem had been in Muslim hands since 637. All right. Between 30,000 and 100,000 Crusaders fight on the First Crusade. Here's the Second Crusade. The later Crusades became about holding the Crusader states, 4 territories set up after the First Crusade by the Christians. The Second Crusade is called when one of these territories, the county of Edessa, is won by the Muslims in 1144. This time the Muslim forces are better prepared and inflict defeats on the Crusaders as they make their way east, before finally defeating the Christians in the Holy Land. So, the Crusader states were the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the counties of Edessa and Tripoli, and the Principality of Antioch, which is right there, Edessa, Antioch, Tripoli, Jerusalem. They're heading down here again, attacking there. But they don't win this time. The Third Crusade happens. In 1187, Sultan Salah ad-Din of Egypt and Syria captures Jerusalem. The Third Crusade is called to reclaim it for Christians. Led by kings including Richard the Lionheart of England, the Crusaders seized the important cities of Jaffa and Acre, but failed to take Jerusalem. Though the crusade fails, Saladin agrees to allow Christian pilgrims access to sites in the Holy Land. So it says Richard the Lionheart's forces came by sea. They're sailing. They stop in Marseille, sailing down here toward Jerusalem. Then we've got a force coming there from Vesolet and Genoa, and from Mons through Vienna down to this way. Armenian lands are much smaller now. All right, and then the Fourth Crusade, which is, that was wild. The last major crusade is a shambles from the start. In need of money, the Crusaders sack the Christian cities of Constantinople and Zara in the hope of gaining wealth. the crusade never reaches the Holy Land, and though there are later attempts to regain it, none succeed, with the last Christians leaving in 1291. So for the first time, the crusade is turned on Christian cities. Wild, wild, wild. So unnecessary. Acre is the last place held by the Crusaders. It falls in 1291. Here's the Crusaders led by Baldwin I of Flanders taking Constantinople. And then there's a huge, really cool painting here of the sacking, the siege of, oh, that's Jerusalem. I thought this was Constantinople. That's why I didn't read it first. But it was Jerusalem. My bad. What's it say? The siege of Jerusalem in 1099 lasted 38 days. It ended when Crusaders stormed the city by using siege ladders. Once inside, they butchered the Muslim and Jewish population and looted the city. This horrible event meant victory for the Crusaders, but also hardened Muslim resolve for revenge. It is true. Yeah, it's a really, it's a very sad event, but really detailed, interesting painting here. Let's see what we've got next. Marco Polo. Let's paint Marco Polo's travels across Asia. In 13th century Europe, very few ordinary people had the ability or need to travel great distances. But Phoenician merchant and adventurer Marco Polo wasn't an ordinary person. From 1271 to 1295, he traveled across Asia, eventually reaching the court of the Mongol ruler, and made a hit book about what he saw. So, growing up, Marco Polo was born in Venice, Italy, around 1254. His father and uncle had traded in Asia for some time and had already built friendly relations with the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan. When the merchants decide to return to Asia in 1271, they take the 17-year-old Marco along. It says here's the Polos leaving Venice on boats. So here they go, stopping over in Acre. Looks like in Acre, the Polos are given letters from the Pope for the Mongol Khan. I just realized I'm pronouncing this in the Brazilian way. Is it Acre? I don't know. I'm going to keep saying Acre. We're heading up by land now, going by camel, I'm guessing. It says, Marco says that the merchants stay around Afghanistan for about a year, possibly to recover from illness. Kashgar and Khotan, and they're heading over. The Polos travel with a camel caravan along the main Silk Road route to China, the way over here till they reach Shangdu. In 1275, after 4 years on the road, the Polos make it to Kublai Khan's court in Shangdu, China. Marco delights in the new surroundings, peoples, and languages, and dives into life at the court so far from home. He becomes a favorite of the Khan. And there he is, and there's Kublai Khan. It says in Dodu or Beijing, Marco sees paper money for the first time. Headed down here, it says merchant Marco can't help but notice the healthy trade in pepper in cities such as Chinsei. And then we're going around and around, because now he's working for Kublai Khan. Marco witnesses a siege of the city of Xianyang that involves giant missile-throwing siege engines. Alright, it looks like it's time for him to head back. It says on their way home in 1292, the Polos do one last job for the Khan when they sail with a Mongol princess to her wedding in Persia. Oh, I skipped one right here. On a mission. Yeah, see, Marco's made an ambassador, and the Khan sends Marco to distant parts of his realm, such as Yunnan, to spy and report back on what he sees, showing that he trusts Marco over his own subjects. While there, Marco says he meets loathsome creatures that can swallow a man in one gulp. Many believe it's a crocodile. Alright, so yeah, he was up to that over here. So now he's sailing back around the Malay Peninsula. It says Marco describes seeing a unicorn in modern-day Indonesia. It was most likely a rhino. Sailing around India here. Marco relates how important exotic spices such as ginger and cinnamon are to cooking along the Indian coast. And there's a box here, Journey Home. After 24 years of traveling, the Polos, longing to see Venice again, reach home. They were gone so long that their friends and family had thought they were dead. Soon after returning, Marco's captured and imprisoned by enemies of Venice, but shares a prison cell with a skilled author. Marco tells him his story, and his book is born. And to Rusticello, his cellmate. But anyway, he's sailing past India. It says the Polos had planned to sail to China from Hormuz, but Marco doesn't think the ships there are good enough, so they go by land. So they're coming back up here, across the Black Sea, and up the Mediterranean back to Venice. It says Il Milione. Marco's book, Il Milione, the Million, possibly a reference to the many things he saw, captured the imaginations of readers across Europe and was one of the first bestsellers when it appeared around 1300. His book introduced his audience to the sights and experiences of Asia, from how foreign kings ruled their realms to how animals like elephants and camels looked and behaved. Let me see how many more we have. We got the Black Death and the Reconquista. All right, okay, so we only have 2 pages. I was about to say, like, if there's more, I'm going to take a stop because I'm getting tired. This is a long video. I knew it'd be a long video, but my goodness. But we only have 2 pages left. We'll get through it. Let's read about the Black Death. Bubonic plague is a deadly disease that swept across the world in the mid-1300s, killing an estimated 150 million people in less than 20 years. It originated in Asia and was spread around the globe on ships that were home to rats carrying infected fleas. A bite from an infected flea would pass the disease on. The disease later became known as the Black Death because of the color of the sores it produced on the skin. Starting here in Asia, the Black Death has already swept through parts of Asia in the 1330s before. In 1347, a plague-infected force of Tatar people, descendants of the Mongol Empire from Central Asia, attacks the Italian-controlled port of Kaffa on the Black Sea. The disease is taken back to Messina in Sicily, Italy, by people fleeing the fighting. I'm surprised. Oh, obviously. About to say, I wonder why there wasn't a map about the Mongols, but pretty sure there was back in Asia. We're doing Europe. My goodness. Starting here in Asia, though, the Black Death has already... we just read this. I told you I'm tired. Let's look at the map. The plague is carried west to Europe along the Silk Road and other trade routes in the mid-1340s. See, the red is plague-affected areas. The spread of infection are the yellow arrows. In 1347, the Tatars catapult the plague-ridden dead bodies of their men into the town of Kaffa to weaken its defenses. Well, that's one way to do it. I wonder if, like, the bodies are flying over the walls, and they're like, ew, that's gross. Why would they do that? That's so weird. And then they all get sick. But yeah, that's a choice. The plague starts around Issyk-Kul, where it devastates a trading community in 338 and 339. Now it heads into Europe. The plague moves rapidly in all directions from Italy, with maritime countries such as England affected sooner than inland European nations. The Black Death first arrives on English shores in August 1348, and 6 months later it is spreading through London. Farther south, the West Asia and Egypt. The West Asia and Egypt are particularly badly hit. I think that's a grammar error. With around 7,000 people dying each day in Cairo. Holy moly. So now, the plague-affected areas all throughout here. All down here. It says after arriving in Constantinople in 1347, the plague spread to Egypt and the West Asia. Why does it? In 1348. Can't forget about the West Asia, I guess. And then heading up here through Europe. Ships traveling across the Mediterranean take the plague to France and southern Spain in 1348. And the Black Death reaches England in summer 1348. It kills around half of the population of London. on to 1349, reaching Africa. From southern Europe, the Black Death spreads to North Africa, including Tunisia, Libya, and Morocco, when the disease arrives in Marrakesh in 1349. At the same time, ships sailing from England to Norway transfer the plague to Scandinavia, while the disease is now firmly established deep into Central Asia. Not the Central Asia, just Central Asia. Look how far it spread. All across here. It says Norway records its first cases of the plague in 1349, brought on ships sailing from England. The plague is carried deeper into Arabia by pilgrims traveling to Mecca. And look at the rats go. Merchants using trade routes take the disease farther into Central Asia. Then in 1350 and 1351, it spread all the way over to China and into India too. Let's see what it says. By 1350, most of Europe has been hit by the Black Death. A year later, the eastward path of the disease reaches parts of China that were previously unaffected. By the time the pandemic peaks in around 1351, an estimated 25 million people have died in Europe, approximately a third of the total population. Outbreaks of the plague continue through the 1700s. It says here almost all of the British Isles are infected by the plague in 1350. Look at this. It just hops down here to, I guess, Ghana, Mali, that empire there, trading gold. The disease reaches the tip of the Arabian Peninsula in 1351. Look at it going down the Nile, or up the Nile, I guess. Into India, into China. It says major outbreaks are recorded in the towns of eastern China in the 1350s. Wow, it spread so fast in, gosh, just a handful of years. It says once a person had the Black Death, they could pass it on by coughing or by being in close contact with others. There was no known cure. Symptoms included fever, coughing up blood, and a rash of purple sores on the skin that turned black. Those infected would usually die after about 5 days. They are burying their dead. I watched The Seventh Seal during the pandemic. I watched it on lockdown, which was probably a mistake because it hit so different during an actual pandemic. Watching a movie about a pandemic. Look at all their sores. Watching a movie about a pandemic during a pandemic, it hit so different. It was so strange to watch. It was really dark. Alright, last page is about the Reconquista. In the early 8th century, Muslim armies from North Africa conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula, which is modern-day Spain and Portugal. Over the next 8 centuries, Christian rulers slowly recaptured the territory, bringing Muslim rule to an end in 1492. This long series of campaigns is known as the Reconquista, or the Reconquest. Muslim rule, let's see, in 711, an army sent by the Muslim Umayyad Caliphate sweeps across Spain. By 718, only the area of Asturias in the northwest remains in Christian hands. It becomes the center of Christian resistance to Muslim rule. So yeah, it's looking like the Christians are red and the Muslims are green by this map here. I don't even have to look at the key to know that. Asturian chieftain Pelayo, let's say it's so far away from me. Pelayo stops the Muslim advance at Covadonga, right there. He forms the kingdom of Asturias and recaptures the lands. The Franks in France repel the Muslims. In 801, they capture Barcelona, re-establishing Christian rule in northeastern Spain. Cordoba flourishes as the capital of Muslim Spain. Great palaces and mosques are built. They're so beautiful. There we go. Holy War. Christian armies take advantage of conflict between local Muslim rulers and begin the Reconquista. They pick up victories including Toledo, Zaragoza, Urique, and Lisbon. But between the 1050s and 1147, their push into central Spain is halted by a new Muslim dynasty from North Africa, the Almoravids. So yeah, look how much they conquer this time. Pushing the Muslim armies down to just the southern area here. Let's see, there's so many things to read. The Almoravids suffer a serious blow in 1118 when Alfonso I, King of Aragon and Navarre, captures Zaragoza. El Cid briefly takes Valencia from Muslim control, but it is lost soon after his death in 1099. Here in Toledo, the Kingdom of Leon Castile captures the important city of Toledo in 1085. This battle over here says in 1086, the Almoravids under Yusuf ibn Tashfin defeat Leon Castile, stopping the Christians. Here in Urique, Portuguese Count Alfonso Henriquez defeats the Almoravids at Urique in 1139 and at Lisbon in 1147, which signals the end of the Almoravids. Then, by 1492, the Reconquista is complete. The world's longest war comes to an end. Spain united. The powerful Almohad dynasty reunites Muslim Spain, but after a crushing defeat in 1212, the empire disintegrates. Christian armies go on the offensive again, and in 1492 they take Granada, the last Islamic emirate, completing the Reconquista. Let's see what we got here. The capture of Valencia in 1238 leaves most of the southeast in Christian hands. There's a battle here. In 1195, the Almohads win a stunning victory against Alfonso IX of Castile at Alarcos. With this battle, it says a combined force of Christian armies heavily defeats the Almohads at Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212. Here at Faro, the capture of the Muslim enclave of Faro in 1249 ends Muslim control in Portugal. It's Cordoba, captured in 1236, and then Granada. After an 8-month siege, the army of Ferdinand and Isabella captures Granada in 1492. Muslims and Jews are exiled or forced to convert to Christianity. And there's Ferdinand and Isabella over here. This is the marriage of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile in 1469, united Spain's two largest kingdoms. And here is Alfonso the 8th, did I say 9th? I'm tired. Of Castile celebrating victory at Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212. And here is El Cid, kind of like a legendary warrior, although he was a real person, but like the stories about him are like more famous than probably what actually happened. Nicknamed El Cid, or the Lord, Rodrigo Diaz was a Castilian military leader who fought for both Muslim and Christian rulers during the Reconquista. In 1094, he captured Valencia from the Almoravids and ruled it until his death. He's celebrated as a Spanish national hero for his brilliance and courage. Look at this epic beard. Gosh, that is like a mythical beard at that point. And his long sword. Ready to attack. Alright, we've made it. We've made it. So next we'll start sailing westward into the Americas and read up to what I assume is going to be modern European history, because I haven't read any of it. Oops, sorry. I bumped my water bottle. I am exhausted. I don't know about you. If you're still awake, let me know. Great job if you're still awake. I am going to go to bed right now. So that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. And like I said, we'll finish this Europe chapter next time we read. So definitely subscribe if you want to hear the rest of that. Also, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night.